Hello folks! This is going to be another video in my introductory series, and this time I'm going to talk a bit about naturalism. Naturalism, at its most basic, basically precludes the supernatural. So it is the opposite of the supernatural, or a belief in naturalism, or a belief system that is informed by naturalism will not include anything that the person considers to be supernatural. That being said, it is a bit of a problematic term. It's a little bit difficult to come up with a really kind of good, solid definition of what naturalism actually means. Because yes, it precludes the supernatural, but you can kind of come up with a lot of definitions of what supernatural actually is. And an awful lot of people in the pagan community in particular, they will not consider magic or the gods to be supernatural or in any way unnatural. They consider them to be part of nature and quite immanent, and very definitely sort of part of the tangible realm in some way. Or at the very least, even if they consider them to be part of a different realm, a sort of spirit realm, that element of spirit is very much considered to be part of the natural world. So that in itself can be problematic, because if you say to somebody, well, I don't believe in the supernatural, they might turn around and say, yes, well, neither do I, but your two belief systems might actually look very different, and you might be defining the supernatural in a very different way. That being said, defining the supernatural as what can be directly seen or experienced or studied by science, which is a common conception, is pretty problematic too. First of all, because the experiences we have in our day-to-day life, in what seems like sort of mundane existence, isn't necessarily the whole animal. There are a lot of experiences that can't be explained by the way that we understand our day-to-day life. And when you think about it, there's an awful lot of stuff that goes on in your day-to-day life that doesn't necessarily fit in perfectly with that sort of Western materialistic view of how things work. I mean, when you think about it, you spend an awful lot of your day, of a 24-hour day, dreaming when you're asleep, or daydreaming when you're awake. And the idea of linear time and everything kind of just working like clockwork in this very mechanistic universe, when we sit down and actually really think about our experience of life, often it doesn't really fit in with that experience at all, and for some people less than others. Another problem with the term naturalism is that it's sort of defined by science. You know, naturalism is that which can be maybe proven by science. But then science is kind of, in turn, informed by naturalism. Scientists, when they go about scientific experiments or theories, they come at it from a naturalistic perspective. So you have this sort of weird loop where the two are informing each other, and it's not very clear where exactly we're even starting from and what this basic idea of naturalism really means. Especially now that in science more and more people are starting to let go of this notion that the universe is completely mechanistic, that we can have some ultimate theory of the universe that will explain everything, and more that is being let go. The more that we discover things like quantum theory, the more that we go down and down into more minute detail, looking at smaller and smaller particles, and the more we understand that actually that materialistic understanding that was developed in the last couple of centuries doesn't actually quite fit with what we're actually experiencing in science right now. So you could almost say that science is veering away from the naturalistic, from naturalism, if naturalism is defined as sort of that very mechanistic view of how the world works, and this idea that the universe is just some big machine that is completely unconscious, completely pointless, not going anywhere, and just sort of churning out all this dead matter. So when it comes down to it, I think naturalism is a very handy starting point for some people, and it was a very handy starting point for me. I have mentioned that I'm sort of dropping the term naturalism from my kind of label, my spiritual label. Up until now I have considered myself to be a naturalistic, pantheistic pagan, but first of all I feel that pantheism actually pretty much covers a lot of what I'm trying to explain about my paganism. It covers my idea about the divine, and it covers a lot of those sort of naturalistic tendencies. And also more and more I'm starting to question whether I really am a naturalist, and if naturalism is really a useful term at all. But like I say, it can be a really useful starting point, and it was something that I needed to start with, because when I came back to paganism first, a couple of years ago, I kind of quickly realised that the way that my worldview had developed and formed while I went to university and became an adult, it really wasn't matching up with any of the sort of standard notions within paganism, any of the ideas of the four elements, of spirits, of personified deity. I couldn't quite get my head around how any of that was actually going to fit in with my worldview at all. It seemed completely at odds, and particularly things like magic and stuff like that. It all seemed completely at odds with my worldview. But still I was drawn to it, and still there was something about paganism and something about that kind of earth-based spirituality that I really needed, and that was very important to me, and that really spoke to me. And I suppose attaching naturalism to paganism and discovering that this was something that people did, it really allowed me to enter into spirituality without feeling as though I was being inauthentic, without feeling like I was just making believe. It sort of offered me a gateway into it. It offered me a gateway into my own spiritual experiences. And I suppose now that I'm maturing as a spiritually centered person, and now that my spiritual practice is maturing, I find I need that label less and less. But I would definitely advise anybody who is coming to spirituality or coming to the pagan community or the pagan, or discovering paganism in general, if they're coming to it from a place of feeling very unsure about whether they can really get on board with a lot of the notions that they're hearing, I would very strongly suggest that they think about naturalism and attaching naturalism to their spiritual practice. Because if you say to yourself, it's fine, I'm just going to revere things as they appear in the natural world, as I can experience them, as science can explain them, you're kind of opening yourself up to the spiritual experience without kind of freaking yourself out and experiencing too much cognitive dissonance. So I think that's just about everything that I have to say about naturalism. I'm going to link below a couple of really useful websites and resources for anybody who is interested in exploring a sort of scientific take on earth-based spiritualities. There's a great website called Humanistic Paganism, and a lot of other really good resources. And you might also want to check out my own blog, which has documented my spiritual journey almost from the outset. I've been blogging for about 1.5 years now. And a lot of people who come to spirituality and are experiencing that sort of cognitive dissonance of thinking, this is something I want in my life, but it's all, they can't get past the woo, you know, they just can't quite make sense of it all and figure out how it's actually going to fit in with their worldview. I've had a lot of people who came across my blog and other blogs like it who were very moved by the idea of naturalistic paganism, and who felt like that was somewhere where they could start off from. And whether or not they end up embracing something that doesn't include the label of naturalism, whether or not they go on to become hard devotional polytheists or not, sometimes, like I say, naturalistic paganism can be a really good way for people to start out. Hope that was useful and interesting. If you have any questions, feel free to comment below or send me a message. And take care, guys, and I'll talk to you again soon. Hopefully soon with another video in this series. I might talk about pantheism the next time.